get a lot of cases to review for publication. I think the biggest mistake people make is novelty. People don't look at the literature enough, or they want to publish something that's already been reported 7, 8, 10, 15 times. It's not novel anymore.
Welcome, everybody. Today, I have a very, very special guest, Dr. Kenar Jhaveri. I work with him. He's my associate chief in nephrology. He has been a rock star in terms of going from a clinician to a full-time professor and a researcher. So I would love for him to share all his success stories and all his journey, how he transitioned from that path to a research path. Welcome, Dr. Jhaveri, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Gia, and I'm so excited to be here. Whatever you guys want to know about, feel free to ask, and we'll take it from there.
Okay, so tell me more about how did you go from a clinician and you went to this medical education and research journey? Tell us, the ups and downs.
It's a sort of serendipitous at the same time. You pick on the opportunities that come your way. So I finished my fellowship, and as soon as I finished my fellowship, I had joined as faculty here. And I had noticed that the way we deliver education is not the greatest in residency or fellowship. It's very one way. I give a lecture and the students or residents or fellows listen, and that's it. There was really no bi-directional mechanism or discussions or something out of the ordinary. And that was my first observation, even during fellowship. And then while I was an attending here for a few months, I really felt that there are other ways we can deliver education better. It might not be the only way, but at least an adjunct to what we already do. So I really started dabbling into a couple of things. One is using more of a case-based model, but more with a competition potential, like where you make teams and you have them compete for the diagnosis. So there's a little bit more competition at the same time. There's sort of more interaction, using more puzzles and crosswords and anagrams to kind of get people engaged as an icebreaker before or after the talk. Used social media in addition to just more classroom-based approach. You can use online means to do things. For example, Twitter is a very good way to get education and interaction amongst people online and within the department. And then blogs were very upcoming at that time, and using blogs to share your knowledge. So whatever you kind of learned that you share as a notebook online and share that knowledge. So these are sort of adjunct ways to teach and learn itself. So that's where I kind of dabbled into education and became sort of my next few years of interest in improving medical education for the nephrologist, and also looking if that change can improve interest into the field of nephrology. So one of the things that a lot of students and residents feared was something we call nephrophobia, or the fear of the way nephrology is taught in medical school and residency. And I think that's what got me interested in trying to get different ways of teaching nephrology, and then using that to see if that increases interest in nephrology fellowships or training in nephrology. I remember back almost 10, 15 years ago, that's when the decline started to happen into nephrology. People fellowship spots were not filling, and the initial decline started happening in 2010, 2011. So getting into that education research was something that really got me from the clinical education world into also the research world on how to even research some of the education methods.
How did you learn about the research methods?
A couple of ways. Some by just reading articles done by others in the non-nephrology world. There were people who had done this in general medicine, in urology. Urology is big into using these sort of methods and creating good research studies. And then I had a good mentor that I sort of serendipitously ran into, with a renal dietitian, but was a great educator and was part of the medical school and wanted to make more educators. And she led me to take a course, an extended course for a year at Harvard Macy. It's an education course where you learn methods and designs on how to do the best set of research in medical education. At the same time, it gives you a network of people that now you can reach out to if I'm doing certain type of research. For example, surveys. Is it just knowledge-based? Is it qualitative research? Is it something where I want to do an RCT? And also gives you an area of where you can actually apply for grants and so forth. So it's a combination of things. mentorship, reading on articles that were education based from other resources, and then attending actually a good medical education research course.
Right, right. So I'm going to pull out a few gems from this segment. Is that even as an attending, you're always trying to improve yourself, looking out for courses, looking out for new materials, finding new mentors. So these are some of the gems that just because you finish residency, you finish medical school, learning is a lifelong thing. And even research is not your main thing. It's still not too late. You can
Correct.
start mid-journey. And so this is a great example. Now, I want to shift gear because Dr. Jhaveri has published many case reports, and it's not just like simple, not so good case report. Dr. Jhaveri has had case reported that has been published in New England Journal of Medicine. So I want to hear what makes a publishable case report or case series?
I think it's your clinical experience and how you dabble into tough cases. I think a lot of times we see very, very good cases and we treat patients appropriately. And sometimes we have to go out of the box and treat them with novel therapies that have never been tried before with the help of the patient's consent and family's consent. And sometimes we have made diagnoses that are very remarkable that people have not done, and it helps save the patient's lives. But often we move on if you were just practicing and like to the next day, and we don't share that information with the rest of the medical community. I think with patients' consent and with the right context, it's important to share what we've learned and how we've discovered these, ways to treat. Because one case report then eventually could lead to a change in thinking, and that can lead to a randomized trial or a retrospective study that can eventually lead to treatment that could change the patient's course for other patients. So I think it's important that everybody take time in their busy schedule if they have a case or cases that they have done something differently and helped the patient to share that with the rest of the medical community, because it's going to help now thousands of patients, even with that one case. And I think that's where it's very important. And I think it's important that the case be unique. It has to be something that's not been done before. If it's been done before, then it has to be where you have done something addition that adds to the knowledge that's already existing. That's what makes a case report novel.
And one thing I also noticed is that, when I round with you and sometimes when we talk to each other, is that you're always looking for cases. Tell me about how you approach like each patient, like when to add more tests, when to do additional pathology slides or more staining. Tell us about your mindset as you start seeing a patient that could potentially become a case report.
So I think the best way to look at this, the way I look at it, is how can I help this patient? I think that's the most important part. And I'm not in private practice where I just have to treat this case of membranous, for example, with just the usual therapy. I'm an academic nephrologist. I have a patient with membranous nephropathy. I want to know, is this membranous nephropathy truly a primary case, or is it something else that's triggering it? Because if I know it's something else triggering it, then I'll be giving this patient the best treatment with all the knowledge I know about that disease, as opposed to just giving a shotgun approach to treatment. And that leads to further investigation that could be, in some cases, appropriate, in some cases could be expensive, and we can't do all of that. But in most of the cases, pretty appropriate. And then now you have a full informed decision about how to treat that patient. And the patient appreciates that. Sometimes when you do that, you actually uncover things that you were like, oh, wow, I'm so glad I did this workup, because now I found this other cause. And if I treated that cause, the kidney disease might get better. And it does a lot of times. Then you sit back and like, wait, that actually is novel. We never thought about these two associations. Now that leads to a case report. I think thinking it the other way around is coming from a case report angle can sometimes be problematic because now you might be doing unnecessary tests in a patient that doesn't need it. But a lot of times you have to keep an open mind and ask the right questions and do the right tests. And you'll be surprised that a lot of times you will find another cause that people haven't looked at.
I see. Okay. So first is every patient, you are really focusing on a patient, what you can do the best. And sometimes we do have to do more tests because I find that as I do more clinical, we like to make a lot of assumption based on pre-test probability. And so we make clinical diagnosis without all the complete tests. And sometimes we need to take a pause and like, are we making the right assumption or not. So that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. So can you give us some advice? Like what mistakes have you seen when people submit case reports or case series? What are the do's and what are the don'ts?
So as a reviewer, when I
Yeah.
get a lot of cases to review for publication, I think the biggest mistake people make is novelty. People don't look at the literature enough, and they publish something, or they want to publish something that's already been reported 7, 8, 10, 15 times. It's not novel anymore just because your patient was a female versus male. So it has to be something that you're bringing to the literature that has never been either described, or it might be in a different presentation that's not been done before. So there are two novelties. One is a diagnostic novelty, the other is a treatment novelty. And the third could be more in depth in terms of you found a diagnosis, but then you did some extra basic science research on it and made some mice model of it. That's even taking it one step further. And then sometimes people have very simple cases to describe, but they only have done one. If you collect 6, 5, now you actually have a series that it weighs much more than just one single case. So a lot of times that involves collaboration and multi-center collection. So sometimes when we deal with rare diseases, which I do, if I see one case and the way I treat it, that led to a multi-center collaboration. Hey, do you have a case? Have you treated this like this? Yes, I do.
Wow.
You have a case. Yes, let's get an IRB together. Let's collect all the 30 cases. Now we have a multi-center study that actually has more robust findings for the remaining 1,000 patients that might have that disease. So
what I can hear is like the network, like look for your network, find collaborations. And so what tips do you have in terms of building a collaborator network?
I think that comes with experience and knowing people at different places, right? I mean, initially, when I first started as a faculty, I didn't have that many collaborators, but you start to, once you publish one case or two cases, people get to know your name, and then you know other people who are published in it. So you kind of reach out to them. You have to reach out. There's no downside in emailing another person. Hey, do you like to collaborate? I'm doing work in an area you're doing work in. And what's the worst answer you'll get? No, I'm not interested, right? Or you'll get no, or you might not get a response at all, which is either means that they're too busy or they're not interested, which is fine, but at least you tried. And the other way, I think it's so much easier now than 10 years ago because of social media and online presence, right? You can easily get emails of people, but it was so hard 10 years ago, 15 years ago. You can easily get either Twitter handles or some social media handles, and you can easily collect a group of people that might be similar in terms of their research and get them together on an email and get the collaboration started. Ask your mentors. You can go to your division chiefs or your colleagues at your work and say, hey, do you know anybody doing work in this? I would like to collaborate. And they might connect you with somebody. So use all your connections. There are Facebook groups out there for doctors that have like-minded skills. There are Twitter groups. There are email groups. I don't think it's a good idea to just say, I don't know where to go. Because I think it's, if you just try, you will easily find people.
I love this. So start with your inner circle or your power base, and also social media, right? But I think what you said something really powerfully is also you take charge and you gather people. That itself is a lot of work, and somebody who can pull that off is bringing a lot of value to the whole group. So that is wonderful advice. Thanks. What I notice is you are extremely productive in terms of scholarly activities, despite being a full-time clinician. So a lot of times when I give certain research advice or writing advice, and people are like, no, it doesn't work for me because, you don't know me. I am 90% clinician. I'm 100% clinician. You are 100% clinician. Tell us what strategies you have in terms of how do you squeeze some scholarly work or research work out of your time?
I think, again, it comes with the time and efficiency. I think number one is prioritizing things, right? So if for you, research work and education, writing is priority, somehow you will put that in your schedule. I think when people say they don't have time, they don't think it's a priority. That's one. Once you prioritize it, you will be able to find time, because it's not like even if you're seeing patients all day, there is time in between that I plug in that I can do 30 minutes of writing or 30 minutes of a collaborative call. And once you get good at one paper, two papers, three papers, you actually become quick. at writing. And second, when you have collaborators, now you're not doing bulk of that writing. You actually are mentoring someone junior to help write, and which I didn't have when I started. I offer that to some junior people who can start the process, and I can come edit and mentor, which is less time of mine as opposed to theirs. So which builds a more bigger collaborative network of mentor-mentee as well. So I think one is just budgeting your time better, creating the right group of mentor-mentees, creating a right group of network that's mutually beneficial, where one person is writing and the other person is editing versus writing and editing or combined. Using apps like Google Docs that makes things much more easy and faster rather than using the old school Word and editing one after another. Those are some tips to kind of enhance your productivity. Using the technology, I think people still are stuck to old school ways of editing and writing. I think using technology to your advantage. In the future, we might use artificial intelligence to our advantage, not to completely plagiarize, but to help edit, perhaps.
Yeah.
It might be a good idea. Why not? If it helps you kind of help you edit better.
I agree. Like ChatGPT is so great at editing, like helping me change, making it more concise, make it sound clearer. They give you specific advice. It doesn't just help with work, but actually helps you improve your craft. So people who are afraid of it, really, you should don't be afraid. Just jump in and try it out and see.
I think one advice one of my mentors gave me a long time ago was people who are perfectionists will never accomplish many things. You have to be a little bit less than perfect to get a lot of things done. And it's okay to not be completely perfect, and because you're always going to have flaws in your writing, and there'll be a second time where you edit it. You don't have to be perfect the first time. And I think when you are a perfectionist at everything, you just will be dabbling into so much detail that you're going to waste your time. Look at the bigger picture. And then when you're really focused and the second time around, you can be a perfectionist at that specific point. Besides patient care, I don't do perfectionism as my first attempt at anything else.
Right. The first draft, you just get the words out. You can edit out, make it nicer later. Right.
Yeah.
Earlier, you said something very interesting. It's about having mentees and also collaborators that are mutually beneficial. What qualities do you look for in a mentee?
In a mentee, dedication, honesty, and hard work. I think I'm not looking for knowledge. I don't look for their experience, because I think that comes with time. But if they are really motivated, if they're really dedicated, then I can see that in the timeliness of their completion of papers or projects. I see that in their, just their communication throughout the whole time they're here. And I think that, and the appreciation that they're getting from the project, I think that's the key. I think a lot of people come in, they're like, oh, I have this knowledge, I have this experience, but they don't have the dedication that is required or the commitment. And I think that's more key in anything you do in life. Then the rest just comes with time. And then just, how well you get along, the chemistry. I think it's important of the mentor-mentee. If you don't get along right away, it's not going to work. It's better they find a different mentor or you find a different mentee. I think that's important.
How do you gauge that though? How do you gauge the dedication at the beginning? How do you gauge the chemistry? Like, sometimes you get a lot of emails. Do you go through a screening process? Do you do interview process?
I mean, I get a sense of that from the repetition of the emails, or is it, how much interest they have when I kind of speak with them, or you can get a sense that they have really researched the whole idea. They really want to do this. They have a timeline in place, that they really spend some time and not just kind of blankly emailing without any thought process of, the next set of months or weeks that they want to do this. I think that helps. And when you interview them, you kind of get a sense of, okay, this is the type of personality I will get along with. They seem dedicated. They seem honest. They're not just flaking and trying to get just something out there without doing the work.
Right. I hear what you're saying, especially people who email me with a very clear idea, like, oh, this is what I want. I've looked through your research. Then you can see that they have really put in some work and not just say, will you mentor me without any background. You don't tell me what you have. You didn't research any of my work, right? So it shows the different levels of how much dedication. So people, if you want to email people to be your mentor, please do a bit of homework and put in the work yourself in terms of what you want to get out of the relationship. We want to see results. We want to see you improve. And so what is the target? So that's really important.
Because that's a lifetime sort of relationship you'll form, because eventually they'll become your colleagues, perhaps. They might become your, collaborators. And who knows, sometimes your mentee could become your boss years later. So, it's always good to have a collegial relationship between the mentor and mentee.
Right. Wow. Your mentee became your boss. I think, yes, it's very possible because a mentee could be someone who is not in a research field, but in a leadership field. So they could eventually become the boss, like chief medical officer. You're right. Absolutely right. Do you have any other final advice for aspiring academics?
I mean, I always say this to every resident or fellow or junior faculty, it's really passion. I think no matter what you do, if you do it and it feels like a hobby, then that's what you should be doing. If it feels like you're doing work and you want to go home, then it's not for you. I mean,
I want to ask you a little bit more because there are things that I really don't like, but when I push further, it will pay off. So how do you balance this whole passion versus it's just hard work, I need to go through this before I get the results? How do you kind of balance that tug?
It's sort of like undergrad before med school. You really want to go to med school, but you have to do undergrad. So there's no option. I mean, you have to struggle. You have to do a few half marathons before you do the marathon if you really want to enjoy doing the marathon, right? So there's always going to be struggles for that passion, and that's okay, as long as you are dedicated towards that end goal. That makes sense?
Okay. So your passion is about the final why, the final goal. But in between, you still need to struggle through all the steps. You still need to work through your skills.
Correct.
Like, as you said, half marathon, you need to train for that first before getting to the full marathon, before it becomes fun.
I mean, there are always going to be things that you might not like about what you do on a day-to-day basis, but it should not be like 80% of what you do that you don't like. If it's like 70, 60% is what you like, there was always going to be parts of your job that are a little bit more monotonous, the administrative stuff or the stuff that you might not enjoy. That's just fine. That happens in every job and every research project, because at the end, you're still passionate about that topic. Say you like electrolytes or AKI, you're passionate about that topic, but to get to that research question and answer, you have to go through certain complexities of learning certain things. That's fine,
I love this. So passion towards the goal, as long as about 60, 70%, you're good, right?
Okay. Yeah, like for example, I want to learn about AI right now, and but that means I have to go through some courses that I might dread. I was like, oh my God, I have to go back to college and learn through these courses. But the end result will be that I'll be able to understand artificial intelligence better as a physician, as a researcher, as an educator. So I'm well read and well versed when I see these things out there. My kids might ask, or my colleagues might ask. So it's worth the effort.
Oh, wonderful. See, even as a full-time professor, full professor, Dr. Jhaveri is now looking for a new course to improve his knowledge. So there you go. How can people reach out to you or get connected to you?
So I'm on Twitter at KD Jhaveri, or they can go on my blog at nephronpower.com. They can also email me at dj200@gmail.com.
Okay, I'll put all the contact information in the description below. Thank you so much, Dr. Jhaveri, for your time. And I hope everybody learned from all his wonderful gems. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.